Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I'll show you a recap of a 2021 action thriller film titled Nobody. As always, spoiler alert, so watch out and take care. The movie begins in an interrogation room where a battered and bruised man named Hutch Mansell is handcuffed and takes out a pack of cigarettes from his jacket. After lighting one, he opens a can of tuna with a can opener and feeds a kitten that he places on the table. Meanwhile, a female and male officer sit across from Hutch and interrogate him about his identity. Hutch responds that he is nobody. The scene then shifts to a flashback where Hutch, a mild-mannered man, is shown living a unremarkable life with his wife Becca and their two children, Blake and Abby, in the suburbs. His daily routine involves morning exercise, sipping coffee while waiting for his bus, and avoiding confrontation during his daily commute to his dead-end job, as well as his constant failure to catch the garbage truck. One night, Hutch is forced to wake up after hearing the neighbor's dog barking. He checks on his daughter, who is sound asleep, and then walks to his son Blake's room, where he finds him awake and gesturing towards the living room. He walks into the living room to find two armed burglars breaking into the house. Unfortunately, before he can alert the police, Hutch is confronted by the female burglar. The female burglar, Lupita, demands money from Hutch, as she holds him at gunpoint. Hutch calmly tells her to take the money from the cash bowl in the kitchen. Meanwhile, the male burglar, Lewis, demands Hutch's watch. At that moment, Hutch notices a tattoo on Lupita's wrist. As the burglars attempt to escape, Blake runs down and tackles one of them. Hutch tries to swing a golf club but hesitates to intervene and asks Blake to let go of the burglar, resulting in Blake getting punched. The burglars take advantage of the commotion and they flee the scene. Enraged, Blake expresses disappointment in his father, causing them to drift further apart. As the police investigate, everyone, including Hutch, feels guilty about his decision not to intervene. They express their disappointment and criticize Hutch for his actions. Later that night, Hutch decides to sleep in the living room, where Abby joins him. She seems to be the only one who shows affection towards him. The next morning, while preparing breakfast, Blake asks Hutch for help with her school report on a veteran. Becca suggests getting help from her brother Charlie, a former soldier. At work, Hutch's boss and father-in-law, Eddie, talks to him about the incident, and Charlie offers him a gun, which he initially refuses. However, Charlie insists that Hutch take the gun to protect his family. After Charlie leaves, Hutch puts the gun into a box and hides it in the back of a refrigerator. He later contacts his half-brother Harry on a hidden radio in his office and explains that he held back during the burglary because the burglars were using an unloaded gun and seemed desperate and scared. Sometime later, he visits his retired FBI agent father, David. That night, Hutch looks at his family gathered around at the dinner table from outside his house. He walks inside the house, but Blake barely acknowledges him. While Becca asks him about his day, his daughter Abby informs Hutch that she cannot find her missing kitty cat bracelet, which was inside the same bowl that the burglar stole money from. Furious, Hutch sets off on a bus and visits David's house. While David is fast asleep, Hutch tries to sneak his old FBI badge and gun, but David catches him in the act. When David asks him about his arrival, Hutch tells him that he must take care of something. In response, David tells him to do his best. The scene then shifts to Hutch traveling through the city. He visits several tattoo parlors, and after showing his FBI badge, interrogates them about the tattoo that he once saw on the female burglar's wrist. Finally, after much struggle, Hutch walks into a tattoo parlor and shows his FBI badge, only to be laughed at by one of the customers, who tells him that the badge expired about 20 years ago. The men inside try to intimidate Hutch and ask him about his identity until one of them notices a tattoo on his wrist that looks like a pair of cards. Suddenly, the anonymous man thanks Hutch for his service and leaves the parlor. Hutch then interrogates the tattoo artist about the tattoo on his desk, which is very similar to the burglar's. After getting the address, Hutch finds the burglar's apartment. Walking through the rain, he reaches the apartment and demands that they return his watch along with Abby's bracelet. However, the duo don't have the bracelet, and they beg Hutch to spare them, revealing their sick baby. An agitated Hutch walks out of the apartment and repeatedly punches the brick wall in fury. Later, Hutch takes a bus home, and while on the bus, a group of drunk men crashes their car into traffic barrels, causing the bus to stop. The men get out of their car and start banging on the bus door. Despite the driver's protest, they force their way onto the bus and start harassing the passengers, including a young girl. Hutch, who had been sitting at the back of the bus, watches as the men harass the girl. He walks up to the driver, guides her out of the bus, and then confronts the group. Hutch removes all the bullets from his gun and beats them all up. However, one man stabs him during the brawl and throws him out of the window. Hutch manages to get back up and re-enters the bus, where he continues to fight and overpower the group. One of the men grabs Hutch's gun and tries to shoot him, but Hutch grabs a pole and attacks him until he dies. He apologizes to the shocked female driver and then goes back home, where Becca tends to his wounds. She asks him where he's been, and Hutch tells her that he is back to his old self. Hutch expresses his regret that they haven't been close lately, and it has been bothering him. Meanwhile, in the middle of the night, a man verbally abuses his driver for driving away from his destination. As the car parks, a Russian crime lord named Yulian Kuznetsov steps out and walks towards a nightclub called Melina, which is located across the street. He walks up to the stage and performs in front of the crowd. After his performance, a delighted Yulian walks through the crowd, meets with some other associates, and then asks if they are satisfied with the security of their shared fortune known as Obshak. He then introduces his right-hand man, Pavel, who questions Yulian's capabilities due to his penchant for dancing and other eccentricities. An enraged Yulian proves his worth by slashing a martini glass onto one of the stakeholders' face and throat, killing him. Yulian is then called to the hospital, where he finds the man whom Hutch attacked with the bus pole. The man's name is Teddy, and he is Yulian's younger brother. The doctors informed Yulian that Teddy had suffered permanent brain damage. Enraged, Yulian violently interrogates Teddy's friends about the incident and demands to know who is responsible for Teddy's condition. Meanwhile, Harry notifies Hutch about Yulian, warning him that Yulian is a dangerous sociopath. Harry persuades Hutch to see the barber, who can provide him with the information about Yulian and Teddy. Hutch travels downtown and meets up with the barber, who was already waiting for him. The barber reveals that Yulian will be obliged to avenge his younger brother, even though he despises him. He hands Hutch a file on Yulian, which contains all the data about the Obshak, an operation dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, and emphasizes how violent and ruthless Yulian is. Meanwhile, Yulian hires a henchwoman and orders her to gather highly classified information on Hutch. However, during her investigation, she uncovers Hutch's true identity as a former ruthless killer and decides to quit, leaving Yulian on his own. In retaliation, Yulian sends a crew led by his right-hand man, Pavel, to capture Hutch at his home. While preparing dinner, Hutch notices 3 suspicious cars parked outside and quickly hides his family in the basement while shutting down the home's power system. Taking advantage of the darkness, Hutch takes down most of the attackers before Pavel teases him and captures him. However, while being transported to Yulian, Hutch wakes up and dislocates his hand to escape the handcuffs. He finds a fire extinguisher in the trunk of the car that he's locked in and uses it to blind his abductors, causing the car to crash, resulting in the deaths of Pavel and the rest of the crew. Hutch returns to his house and frees his family from the basement. To shield Sammy from the grisly scene, he covers her eyes as they exit the house, which is littered with dead bodies. Hutch then sends his family to safety and sets his home on fire to eliminate any evidence. Before setting the house ablaze, Hutch gathers all the bodies of the attackers, including one who was barely alive in the basement. He reveals to the dead thugs who are chained about his past as a former auditor and an assassin for intelligence agencies. Hutch explains how he tracked down one of their targets a year after letting him go free, only to find him happily married with 2 children, leading him to retire against the wishes of his superiors and settle with his family. Hutch discovers his daughter's kitty cat bracelet on one of the dead attackers. After burning his house, he purchases Eddie's company, using a stash of gold bars, much to Charlie's dismay. Hutch then locates and eliminates the Obshak and its guards, burning the fortune that Yulian was protecting for the mob, along with his art collection. He then visits Yulian's nightclub, and after a little confrontation, Hutch walks out of the club, only to be chased by Yulian and his men. Hutch leads them on a high-speed chase throughout the streets, killing several men before managing to make it back to the warehouse. Once inside, he is surprised to find Harry and David, who have come to assist him. Fortunately, by using a variety of weapons and deadly traps that Hutch had set up, they kill all the gunmen until only Yulian is left. Out of ammunition, Hutch charges Yulian with a claymore mine attached to a pane of bulletproof glass and detonates it, killing the Russian mobster. After ensuring that his father and brother escape, Hutch surrenders to the police. The scene shifts to the present, where Hutch is being interrogated by 2 detectives. They receive mysterious phone calls but are unable to trace them. Eventually, Hutch is released due to lack of evidence. 3 months later, while Hutch and Becca are looking at a new house, the real estate agent receives a phone call, and Hutch recognizes the voice of an old adversary, indicating that someone is still after him. Thank you so much for watching. We really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content just like this. And if you have a movie that you'd like us to recap, please let us know in the comment section below. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.